Andrew Williamson here. Welcome back to Williamson Education. In our most recent lesson, we started looking at common idioms in English. We emphasized the fact that the meaning of an idiom is often not directly obvious from the words that compose the idiom. Often, in order to learn the meaning of the idiom, you must hear the idiom used in the cultural context for which it was intended. Today we're going to drill down a bit and focus on a more specific kind of idiom called the prepositional idiom. Prepositional idioms are, you guessed it, idioms involving prepositions. You will recall that prepositions are those little words that indicate space and time relationships. In prepositional idioms, a preposition is combined with either an adjective or a noun to form meaning in a particular phrase. We have already seen a couple of these idioms in our work so far, for instance in the phrase different from, and in the idiom under the weather. Let's spend today looking at some more of these idioms in order to understand best how they work. We'll begin with prepositional idioms that involve adjectives. These idioms usually have an adjective first and then a preposition second, immediately following the adjective. For instance, take the adjective aware, meaning knowing about something. When you use the adjective aware, you would typically use it with a preposition of to form the prepositional idiom aware of. Let me give you an example sentence so that you can see how this prepositional idiom works. I was not aware of the storm that was coming, so I had not brought an umbrella to the game. Here we see an adjective in the word aware, followed by a preposition in the word of, followed by the object of the preposition, the storm. These words together form a correct construction involving the prepositional idiom aware of. Or take the adjective dependent. Do you know which preposition would be used with the adjective dependent? Typically, that preposition would be on, forming the phrase dependent on. Consider this example sentence. Children begin their lives completely dependent on their parents, but over time, kids gain more independence. See what I have done there? Adjective plus preposition, followed by the object of the preposition. That's a proper prepositional idiom. What about the adjective familiar? What is the correct preposition to use with familiar? That preposition would be with, as in, are you familiar with many piano pieces? Or how about good? Let's say you want to tell someone that they played the violin well. You could use the preposition at along with the adjective good to describe the idea, forming the prepositional idiom good at, as in, you are very good at playing the violin. Let's do one more prepositional idiom involving an adjective. We can use the word interested. Any guesses as to what preposition is used with the adjective interested? That would be the preposition in, as in, I am interested in biology. As you can see from these examples, there's a whole range of prepositions that are to be used with various adjectives, of, on, with, in, and at, for example. And as you can also see from these examples, there's no particular rhyme or reason for which preposition goes with which adjective, by which I mean that there is no particular logic for using a certain preposition with a certain word. In order to gain control over prepositional idioms, you sort of just need to get out there and hear how people are using the language. We have seen with various topics in English that there are often rules that govern sentences, and that there are exceptions to these rules too. With prepositional idioms, I don't know that there are even rules per se, only exceptions. Each unique case is its own exception. So don't try to learn any particular rules. Just get out there and start creating your own lists of prepositional idioms as you encounter them in daily life. That brings us to our next set of prepositional idioms, those involving prepositions and nouns. I mentioned that we had already seen at least one of them in the phrase under the weather, which means to be slightly sick. There are countless other prepositional idioms that is important to know, and you will hear speakers of English use these idioms constantly. In fact, you might even hear some of these idioms come out of the blue, which is, that's right, a prepositional idiom. There's that pair of prepositions out of, followed by the object of the preposition, the blue. Can you guess from the context in which I have said this idiom what out of the blue might mean? For something to come out of the blue means for it to arrive unexpectedly. Let's say you haven't heard from a friend in a number of years, and suddenly one day you receive a call from them. That call would come out of the blue. To tell you the honest truth, there are many idioms whose meanings I know, but whose origins I do not. Some quick research suggests that the phrase out of the blue is part of a longer idiom, a bolt out of the blue, like a thunderbolt that comes when the skies are clear. That thunderbolt arrives unexpectedly, without prior announcement. That is why the phrase out of the blue refers to an event that catches you off guard or even surprises you. If you don't want surprises to come at you out of the blue, you might want to ask your classmates or colleagues to keep you in the loop. What in the world could this idiom possibly mean? Once again, we have a prepositional idiom involving the preposition in, followed by the object of the preposition, the loop. To keep someone in the loop means to keep them informed of important updates relevant to, say, a project that a group is working on together. What's the origin of this idiom, the etymology of the phrase? To tell you the truth, I do not know, and I don't need to know, as long as I can understand its meaning and the context in which it appears. Another idiom that has to do with knowledge is in the dark. Keeping someone in the dark is the opposite of keeping them in the loop. To remain in the dark means to not know about some important event. Imagine that you are looking for a light switch in a dark room, but you cannot find it. That's because you are in the dark about where to find that switch. What about by the book? Have you ever heard a person described as by the book? Perhaps this means that the person enjoys reading, right? Not quite. The phrase means that the person is especially rule following. A by the book person does not break any rules and always follows the laws to the letter of the law, exactly as the law is written, that is. This one is a bit easier to guess the origins of. Rules in English are often written in a rule book, so a person who is by the book has read that rule book quite carefully. And be careful, because if you break a rule, you might be on the hook for the consequences of that rule breaking. Can you guess what on the hook means? It is an idiom that refers to being responsible for a certain outcome. It is the exact opposite of off the hook, which means to not be responsible for something that has happened. As you can see, the world of prepositional idioms is wide and varied. I would say that there are as many prepositional idioms as there are prepositions, but the truth is that there are actually many more. The same preposition can mean different things in different contexts, and opposite prepositions can actually mean the same thing in different contexts. With idioms, everything is dependent on context, especially a country's cultural context. As you immerse yourself more in native English-speaking environments, you will find yourself becoming more and more skilled with idioms. You will be able to decipher them much more easily with time, and you will learn how to use some of the common ones yourself. Once again, do not feel frustrated if you do not understand the meaning of a particular idiom right away. It takes time and exposure to idioms in a variety of relevant contexts before their meanings become crystal clear. Well, with that, we come to the end of our lesson on prepositional idioms. Go home and take a rest for now. You're off the hook for the day. And spread the word.